It's morning at NTV. I'm Andrew Chamagid and we're live from Kampala's Serena Conference Center. Now, as the COVID-19 plumes African nations, it is forcing most of their citizens and organizations online. And because of the social distancing measures in place, many those who can't afford may be left out behind for some reason. So for years, my next guest has been working to ensure that when the shift to digital happens, no one is left behind. Mr. Chris Alukolio, welcome to Morning at NTV, and it's an honor to have you today.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Well, I understand that your organization, the UN Capital Development Fund, has been working with the Sweden Development Agency in implementing a program in Uganda designed to build an inclusive digital economy in Uganda. Walk us through it. Walk us through this project.
Yes, thank you so much for having me, and I'm hoping that all our colleagues and countrymen are staying safe and indoors. Yes, the UN Capital Development Fund is implementing a program that's focused on ensuring that underserved communities are not left behind. And when we talk about underserved communities, we're talking about, women, youth, refugees, and host communities, but also, yes, importantly, small businesses, because as you rightfully said, this is a digital era. We're no longer talking about digital finance or, one aspect, but we're talking about a digital economy. So all our work at UNCDF with this program is focused on ensuring that Ugandan is left behind in this digital era. Okay, so we work in different sectors. We focus on agriculture, health, education, as well as finance. And the idea is that we undertake or the government to ensure that we are implementing either new business models or testing out new approaches to business or new technologies that are enabling underserved communities to make use of digital platforms to improve their productivity as well as their well-being.
I understand. Yeah. So as the most democratizing technology on planet, mobile technology is uniquely positioned to support institutions with various challenges, if I may say, and ensure that their target population gets there. So what have you been doing to ensure that even Uganda, where you are, the technology works for all?
That's a great question, Andrew. We work quite a lot with, as I mentioned, with the private sector. As you can imagine, yes, in the urban areas, you might have decent connectivity. Although right now, with all of us trying to be online, that might be challenged. But we also try to make sure that those underserved communities also have access to connectivity, okay? So working with telecom companies to, as well as other private sector players, to ensure that there is connectivity in some of the more rural areas of the country. Okay. It's also important that beyond having connectivity, you have to have the devices to access these digital platforms. So again, working with the private sector to ensure that there is access at that last mile, access to devices, access to payment plans that allow poorer members of our communities to afford these devices, but also working with the government to ensure that the policy and regulatory environment is enabling. I'll give you an example. There was a time when, I think because of fraud or whatever it was, refugees were not allowed to access SIM cards with their attestation letter. But working with the government to get that reinstated is another step that is taken to ensure that there's an enabling policy and regulatory environment so that that underserved community can actually access phones, can access SIM cards, can get a mobile money number to be able to receive money or send money back home. So these are some of the things we do to ensure that this is that more and more Ugandans are included in this digital era. Another example is that as more and more, obviously, access to finance is a very big challenge for our rural farmers. But there are fintechs, there are companies out there that are digitizing the operations of rural farmers. And by that, I mean capturing the sale, delivery of their services and goods on digital platforms, recording these transactions. That data is very, very valuable because it allows one to be able to keep a record more easily than if they were just using paper and pen. And those records allow us to know how productive is the community, can we advance them loans, can we invest more in productivity in one value chain versus another. So these are some ideas, and these are some of the interventions that we are involved in with several on the horizon. Yes.
Mr. Lukolio, you seem to have a specific focus on the rural women, the youth, and of course the refugees. Why are these groups, why are you focusing more on these ones that they shouldn't actually be left behind in terms of the digital inclusion?
That's a great question. The focus is mainly because, I mean, you and I are talking on Skype. We already have access, all right? The point is that there are those communities that are in danger of being left behind. And we really can't talk about national development if we are only pulling certain segments of the population forward. So it's really in an attempt to make sure that everybody is involved, everybody takes part. And this crisis has actually shown us that, you know, we are all interconnected, all right? We are all part of the same community, that we can't only serve one part of the community, we must serve the entire community. And so we want to ensure that those underserved communities are not left behind so that all of us can develop together.
Project that I've had a chance to look at promises to work with the private and public sector to secure digital inclusion. What have you been doing to make these two a reality come to life?
To ensure digital inclusion, so as I mentioned before, there are several interventions that we've undertaken. Access to finance is not just one of them. Also imagine things like right now, unfortunately, children are not able to go to school, all right?
Yeah.
And so communities that have access to devices and connectivity are the ones that are able to access educational materials, all right? What we are doing is that we're working with different partners to look at e-learning solutions, all right? What solutions are out there that can enable communities to access educational materials leveraging digital platforms? And remember, if you are going to tailor a solution to an underserved community, you must take certain things into account. Yes, connectivity will be low, levels of literacy will be low. So we are testing those approaches to access to education. We're also working to improve digital literacy. You know, when I talk about these underserved communities, yes, women, youth, refugees, small businesses, they will not be able to use these platforms if they're not digitally literate. And by that, I mean, you know, are you able to use a device to send and receive money? Are you able to access information online? Are you able to connect with your customers? This is literacy that's actually going to make it, which is going to be important if we're going to survive and actually continue to do business, not just through this crisis, but in this digital era, frankly speaking.
Technology can be seen as an accelerator of power to act in our society, allowing everyone to have the positive impact and contribution to the daily life as an individual and within the collective approach, if I may put it that way. So have you had the same experience with it?
Could you repeat that question, please?
Digital technology is an accelerator of power to act.
Yes.
Not only that is in our society. Have you had the same experience with the digital technology? Have you acted because a digital lens have prompted you to? And what was your experience like?
Indeed, I think you have some background noise there. But yes, indeed, digital technologies have, you know, I should mention to you that digital technology is an enabler, all right?
Yeah.
The rules don't change. You know, we obviously as citizens, as small business owners must always know what our customers need. And yes, the access to digital platforms has in fact served as a catalyst in many situations. So for us as UNCDF, there has been historically a focus on digital finance because unbanked populations that are far away from banks, that don't have the literacy levels to open a bank account, there was a big opportunity to have them financially included by leveraging mobile money and other types of digital financial services. But as more and more people access mobile devices, we realize that, look, we're no longer dealing with digital finance. We're dealing with a digital economy. This is a digital era, okay? And so, yes, we have, as a result of this advent, as a result of this greater uptake of technology, we have seen new opportunities to serve new communities. And I'm hoping that businesses in Uganda, that service providers in Uganda will see the same opportunity, that right now, yes, we are distanced from one another. But frankly speaking, technology offers us a chance to reduce transactional costs, to increase the ease with which we can keep track of our transactions. And so really it's an opportunity for businesses to reach out to new customer segments, to test out new business models, to reach out to customers in ways that they did not do before. I'm seeing more and more businesses now looking at e-commerce platforms. When you talk about delivery of goods to your home, people are no longer eager to touch cash. They're more willing to pay with mobile money.
Oh, yeah.
There are businesses that had previously not considered merchant payments that are looking into that. And now when we take our children to the hospital, yes, it would be a loss of business for the hospital, for the clinic, if they say, look, sorry, we can't accept mobile money. So I think that it's, even though we are in a time of crisis, the greater access that we have to digital platforms is also an opportunity. And I'm glad that I think Uganda as a country, we've had much greater uptake of digital platforms, but also our government has been very, very proactive in promoting the usage of and making it easier for people to access these devices. So I think, yes, the circumstances present an opportunity, but I also think that it's a chance for service providers, for businesses to look at new ways to serve their customers and really harness that opportunity.
That said, our community is proactive, or what could be the challenges you're facing on the ground while you're trying to inculcate the inclusion in the digital lens? Yeah,
that's a great question. I mean, the challenges we face are always going to be around those who have access to opportunity and those who don't. So literacy is a big challenge that you can imagine that if I use a mobile device to send and receive money, I need to, many times I have to know how to read, okay? So, the menu items might be in one language. I need to know the logic, or, press 1 for this, press 2 for this. So there's a certain level of digital literacy that I have that somebody else might have. So this is a challenge that, of course, with our programs at UNCDF, we are addressing this issue of digital literacy. And the reason that we partner with private sector companies, with government, is for the purpose of sustainability. Obviously, the work of the UN, the work of the UNCDF, we see our role as catalytic. We need to empower customers, we need to empower the small businesses so that they can continue to do this work even when we are not doing it, okay? So addressing issues of digital literacy, that's a major challenge that we're seeing. We're also seeing challenges of perception, of misinformation, unfortunately, that many times information, even though we're in a digital era where information travels quickly, unfortunately, this information travels even faster, okay? Oh, yeah. So that is a challenge that actually can be an impediment to people taking on new business ideas or new business models, or even taking on new technologies because, oh, I heard that this technology makes me sick, or I heard that the people in this country who use this technology, misinformation travels much faster. And this is a challenge that we also see as we implement our program. And frankly, I think that many Ugandans see in their day-to-day lives. There is also Were you asking another question? Go
No,
ahead.
no, 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 no. Carry on.
Yeah, no, I was saying that there is also the challenge that sometimes, unfortunately, you know, distance is still a problem. That, as I mentioned, you know, access to digital platforms, access to digital service offerings is a plus. But if you cannot access the device on which to access these platforms, you really are left out. Okay, so there are those parts of the country where you might not have access to the right types of devices, whereby even if you have access to the device, there are no suitable payment plans for those communities. And there is no real access to any form of financing because, yes, in other countries, you are able to get a device and you pay for it slowly. But we are working with telecom companies to see if we can have payment plans that are tailored to rural communities. Okay. Another challenge that we have, going off of the segue of access to finance, is that many times the small businesses that are trying to take on new business ideas, the rural farmer who's trying to use WhatsApp to access the provider of farm inputs, that person might not always have access to credit to sort of carry out the different operations that he or she wants to take on. And so traditionally in Uganda and other countries, when you need to access credit, when you need a loan, you need to have a land title, you need to have some kind of collateral. And unfortunately, this is a challenge that persists even in the digital era, even as we try to implement new business models and reach new clients. A small business could have a great idea right now to address this crisis. But if they don't have access to credit, they can't do this. And so these are the challenges, some of the challenges that we see in implementing this program, and I'm sure businesses in Uganda are seeing and implementing their own businesses and taking.
Mr. Lukoyo, if you can still hear me, given the COVID-19 pandemic outbreak, what models are we looking at to develop a fully inclusive society?
Yeah. No, some of the models that I think we are seeing crop up more and more. Again, I think that the leveraging of e-commerce platforms to reach our customers. So for the purchase and delivery of goods, the leveraging of digital payment solutions. I think this will be a big opportunity to leverage those even more. We also are seeing models that are focused on, the crowdsourcing of information. I think that in the past, we've relied very much on, yes, in-person interaction and so on. But right now, we are seeing more and more business models that are looking at leveraging digital platforms to look for information. As I talked about, if you are going to serve customers, ultimately, you need to know what those customers need, all right? And so leveraging digital platforms to look for information, to better understand what your customers need. But we're also seeing more and more an appreciation for digital data, okay? That, as I mentioned earlier, the use of digital platforms allows us to more easily keep track of transactions, to know who is ordering this product from me much more often than others, okay? So with that, you can actually analyze data from your transactions to be able to better serve your customers, all right? So, the use of data as a competitive advantage, analysis of data to better understand your customers, the use of e-commerce platforms for the ordering and purchase of goods, the use of digital payment platforms. I think that this is, these have been, frankly, in Uganda, it's been more than a trend. I think that these have been major business uptakes over the last couple of years, but it's going to be even more, a much stronger offering now more than ever. And again, the use of social media and other social interactive platforms to gather information, to understand what are the trends, what are people talking about, what do my customers want, but also a chance to, I think, most importantly, to actually provide accurate information to your customers. I think that right now, those people who are able to get information to their customers are going to be much more successful than those who have relied on traditional media, usually. So, I mean, these are some aspects of new business models that we're seeing out there.
I understand. So, Mr. Lukoyo, last but not least, how has COVID-19 affected your work? I understand you're working from home day in, day out. How has it affected you heavily?
Yeah. No, as you can see, I'm working from home.
Oh, yes.
Just like many others are trying to do. I mean, and unfortunately, it's only a lucky few who are able to do this. Of course, others who rely on a day-to-day basis, out trading in the trading centers, can't take advantage of this. But yes, I'm working from home. The challenges have been that, unfortunately, connectivity can be much slower than usual because everybody is trying to get online.
True.
And believe it or not, even the segments of the population that we might think are not accessing digital platforms, everybody is online trying to access information, trying to get updates on this crisis. So connectivity has been much lower. But also, reaching out to people and making sure that you stay motivated. I should mention that I think that a big challenge with this crisis has been, of course, people can tend to panic. Of course, misinformation doesn't help.
True.
So it's been a challenge, I think, to make sure that we as ourselves stay motivated. And I would encourage others, even if you're indoors, to stay motivated. This will pass, obviously.
True.
To stay active, to keep reaching out to colleagues, to make sure that you are still thinking of new ideas and working closely together, even if you are not in direct physical contact. So for me, I think it's been a challenge to try and sort of keep others, customers, clients, partners. But it's also a blessing that we're able to do this. I think that we have an opportunity and a duty to serve our countrymen, to provide accurate information, but also think of new ways to meet the needs of those that are in danger of being left behind. And so as we implement this program, for me, it's been a big opportunity and a big privilege to be able to do this, even when I'm isolated at home.
Oh, thank you so much, Mr. Lukoyo. Thank you for your time. It's gratifying to have you every time we can. And please stay home, stay safe.
You too. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you again. Well, that will take us for a break and we'll be back shortly.